They have a really nice museum building. On the side of the building, they have some scenes related to the history and culture of the valley. It's pretty neat. Outside, they have the old Tetonia school bell. And here's a Fordson tractor. In the last few years, they moved the monuments from the old Teton County Courthouse here. So this is the old Daughters of Utah Pioneers monument to John Colter. He was on the Lewis and Clark expedition, and on their way back he decided to stay. He was the first white man to enter the valley. He discovered Teton Pass, Jackson Hole, and Yellowstone National Park. And here's the Pioneers Memorial. This is the original soda fountain bar from the Corner Drug in Driggs. It was originally from England. A display on the midwives who aided in delivering and caring for babies in the valley in the early days. This room on the side is Grandma's Corner. It's got some cabinets and some domestic artifacts. But mainly, it has a lot of weird and terrifying dolls. So this is a diorama of some mountain men at a Native American camp, perhaps during the rendezvous. Here are some Native American artifacts and bones. See, buffalo skulls. I like this one because it came out of Bitch Creek. There's a taxidermy moose head. It's like a brown bear, a buffalo hide, and a buffalo head.
Teton Valley was one of the first places to be explored by the early fur traders and trappers. With the Lewis and Clark Corps of Discovery travels at the turn of the 19th century, the vast unknown West.
This grizzly bear attacked a guy in the valley in 2007.
Edward Robinson and William Price Hunt, the leader of the Astorian Fur Company. From 1825 to 1840 was the rendezvous era, when trappers, Indians, and traders would meet to sideline to summer farming and other enterprises.
And
as more homesteaders arrived from the Rocky Mountains,
fur trapper,
about 1,000 people are believed to
wax
have attended
figure
it.
or mannequin.
The valley had a second wave.
This is one of the more unique artifacts here at the museum. This is the Colter Stone. It is believed to have been made by John Colter. You can see it's not only weirdly in the shape of a head, possibly carved by him, it does have his signature there. Yeah, it's a pretty neat relic. So this is like a saddlery.
You can almost hear
see all these old saddles,
echo in the Brandon
like ranching equipment and clothing.
Heritage is featured along with tack,
barbed wire,
saddle, and clothing used and worn by ranchers and settlers. Horses and the knowledge of how to raise and care for them. A brand is a simple symbol to mark each animal so the owner could identify their ownership.
These are some relics from the old Driggs post office.
Erected on the north end of the valley by J.C. Roundy Homestead.
Yeah, they still have all the post boxes.
By many cattlemen. The cattlemen in the valley were not happy when...
These are pretty neat. These were spurs worn by George Little while riding for the Pony Express in 1860. Here, this is an old-timey office. Got a bunch of cash registers, typewriters, accounting tools. Oh yeah, political memorabilia. So those are all the Republican presidential campaign buttons of the 20th century. Here these fiberglass oxen are pulling a pioneer family in a Conestoga wagon out to the valley. This guy's got a hairy neck. The wagon being pulled by these horses was actually used to come homestead in the valley in 1906. It's neat they let you come sit in a wagon that a family took to settle the valley over 100 years ago. This is an old map of the Mormon Trail from Nauvoo to Salt Lake. And this is the Daughters of Utah Pioneers room. We have a bunch of antiques in here. Next to this buffalo skull, they have a hair wreath. This chair entered the valley in 1889. This is the valley's first flag that flew in 1891. Here's an old spinning wheel. I really like this museum because it's one of those old-fashioned ones, even though it's a fairly new museum, and it's just filled with junk. There's some accordions, a violin, and a Pioneer rifle, and a drum set. This is an exhibit on Sam, Idaho, and that was a mining town that was in the Teton Basin's Horseshoe Canyon. It was a coal mining community, so yeah, probably a lot of people ended up with a black lung like this guy. That's a small coal car that was used in Sam. They also tried to find gold. I think this is a bunch of stuff from the original Teton County courthouse. Here's some telegraph machines. This is neat, a panorama of Driggs from 1901. Things have definitely changed. The only building I think that's still there recognizable is the corner drug right there. The old days of photography. I'm so glad I don't have to do this. There's some needled cameras and a stereoscope. Here are more typewriters and calculators and stuff. Old projectors. Here's a bunch of dug up guns. And here's a very worn ox yoke.
This is also one of the more unique artifacts here, the revolver of Ed Trafton, the Yellowstone Bandit. In July of 1914, based on varying accounts, he robbed a 19 to 24 stagecoach caravan of wealthy tourists visiting Yellowstone National Park, meaning he held up around 165 passengers at gunpoint. He did rob over $1,000 from the tourists and also most of the jewelry, but he was apparently very cordial and mannerly to the people he robbed, so that was very emphasized in the newspaper stories that came out about the incident. One of the stagecoaches did escape back to Old Faithful to report the crime, and Trafton was caught, but this was the revolver he had on him during one of the last stagecoach robberies of the Wild West.
Alright, now up on the second floor of the museum. Up here they have a whole bunch of interesting flags, like the Confederate flag and the Gadsden flag over there. Interesting. And here we have the one-room schoolhouse. And like every one-room schoolhouse I've ever been to, you gotta have a portrait of Lincoln and Washington. They've done a really great job with these building dioramas and replications. This is an old homestead. Here we have an outhouse and a chicken coop. Like 10 out of 12 months of the year here in the valley, you pretty much gotta wear these to go outside. Here we have a dining room set. All sorts of old cabinets used to store food and cooking utensils and stuff. Look at that coat. This is a Monarch stove. They were supposedly pretty good stoves to have. This looks to be a little later than the Pioneer era. Here we have a Singer sewing machine and an old telephone. There's a radio. Creepy. This is a nursery full of antique baby clothes.
The collection of creepy dolls continues, but there's Charlie McCarthy. These are old seats from Pierre's Playhouse Melodrama Theater in Victor. And that's an original outdoor speaker from the one and only Spud Drive-In Theater. There's some old telephones. And that's the old telephone switchboard from the area. They have a cheese factory display. Apparently cheese was made in the valley. Now gonna bust into the old-timey saloon. There you can see the dead man's hand the cards Wild Bill Hickok had on him when he got shot in the back of the head. Here's one of the weird Durant hair curling machines from the 20s. An old-fashioned barber shop. And here's the dry goods store.
This is a 1915 organ. Here, this room is full of old portraits of dead people. This is actually really sad. It's a hair wreath of a 7-year-old girl who was playing with her friends, and one of them dared her to jump over a fire, and she caught on fire and died. And one of the popular things to do here during the winter is ski. There's a lot of great places to ski, like Grand Targhee. That place is pretty awesome. Check out my videos. And during the 2 months where there isn't 10 inches of snow on the ground, you could play like the flute or something, or play bowling. This is the quilt section. And here are 200 sets of salt and pepper shakers. Pretty neat, but not quite as impressive There's the Salt and Pepper Shaker Museum. Here we have another Singer sewing machine. There's a mannequin listening to the radio. Here's Christmas morning. Here's fashion from the Roaring 20s.
The museum has a significant section recognizing the veterans of Teton County. The Teton Special, a B-26 Marauder, was used in World War II primarily in North Africa. The crew's captain was Alfred Knutson from the Valley, and after they got a bunch of kills, he got to custom name the plane, so he called it the Teton Special. Out of all the small town museums I've visited, I think this is the only one that has a portrait or something recognizing every individual veteran from the county or region, which is super awesome that they do that here. Here's some artifacts from World Wars I and II. There are 4 Civil War veterans who ended up in Teton Valley. Really like this vintage 3D Uncle Sam poster. Here's a collection of uniforms used throughout the years. Those boots landed on Normandy on D-Day. That's absolutely amazing. This is an escape and evasion map given to US and British soldiers in case they were behind enemy lines. This is a Vietnam display. That's a cartoon-like pamphlet about the Viet Cong booby traps. And here's some more World War II artifacts. So the main building of the museum is very impressive, but there's still more to see.
And this is a new feature to the museum that I have not been inside yet. This is the Baylor Cabin. It just got moved here last year, so let's see what the inside is like.
The cabin was built by Tex and Niall Baylor in the early 1900s in a town called Cache that no longer exists in the valley, but this does show what a pioneer cabin looked like in a genuine pioneer cabin.
And now we're going to see the Ag building. Outside they have a bunch of old agricultural equipment like that thing, and McCormick mower, and a plow. Look at that, it's a pea drill. Where are all my hundreds of thousands of views? This is interesting.
In here there are a bunch of artifacts having to do with agriculture and the homestead, along with some vehicles that are pretty interesting. Idaho license plates in the shape of Idaho. This snowplane was built by a local in the 90s for ice fishing at Grand Teton National Park, and there are some fish mounts. In this tree stump sample you can see through the rings all the years of history this tree lived through. This was the old school bus for the valley. It was horse-drawn and would take the children from Chapin to Victor for school. It did have heating in the winter. This is a 1910 sheep wagon used by the humans when herding groups of sheep. There are some plows. And as this is potato land, there is a New Deal potato bag. And that is a grain binder reaper.
So that was the Teton Valley Museum. Definitely one of the best local museums that I've ever been to. If you're in the valley, definitely worth checking that out. And if you like this video, then I have a bunch of other videos around Teton Valley and at all sorts of local history museums, roadside attractions, all sorts of stuff. So please go check out my other videos, and thanks for watching.